Welcome back to the Begin Purpose podcast, and welcome to the next episode in the Body Mass Identity, Weight Loss Identity track. In our last episode, we talked about future body narrative, the story you're currently telling yourself about how all of this is going to turn out. You met Marcus, 14 months into a GLP-1 medication, who had taken 3 past attempts and quietly turned them into a guarantee about his future, without ever noticing he'd made that decision. We talked about the difference between a closed door and a door that's just hard to open, and we ended with a small practice, a few minutes spent imagining, without needing to believe it fully yet, what ease might actually feel like. Today, I want to continue that journey by picking up a thread I mentioned right at the end of that episode and never quite finished. This episode is called Hidden Body Identity, and it's about a phrase that might be one of the quietest, most expensive phrases in this entire series. Not yet. Let me tell you about a woman I'll call Renee. Renee hadn't been in a photograph in 4 years. Not one. Family gatherings, holidays, her daughter's college graduation, Renee was there, fully present, often the one who took the photos, but never in them. It wasn't a rule she'd announced out loud. Nobody in her family had ever said anything unkind about how she looked. If you'd asked the people close to her, they would have told you Renee seemed completely comfortable, funny, warm, the one who made sure everyone had a drink in their hand and felt taken care of. What they didn't see was the quick, practice sidestep every time a phone came out. The, "Oh, I look terrible, don't take my picture," said lightly enough to sound like a joke, repeated so many times over so many years that it had become invisible to everyone except Renee, for whom it was a small, constant negotiation. Dozens of times a year, every year. Hidden body identity describes a pattern centered on avoiding visibility. And I want to be precise about that, because it isn't the same as avoiding people. It's avoiding the specific moments where the body becomes the focus of attention, even briefly, even for a second, even when nobody around you is thinking about your body at all. It shows up as skipping events where visibility feels heightened, pools, beaches, reunions. It shows up as choosing clothing specifically to minimize attention rather than for comfort, or for how it actually makes you feel. It shows up as a persistent undercurrent of discomfort in public or semi-public settings, and as a kind of social withdrawal that's subtle enough that nobody else notices it, but constant enough that it's exhausting to carry. And underneath all of that, there's often one quiet, mostly unspoken belief holding the whole pattern together. I'll start really living, going places, doing things, letting myself be seen, once my body is different. That belief deserves its own moment, because it's usually the quietest part of the pattern and also the most consequential. It doesn't announce itself as a belief you've decided to hold. It shows up as a felt sense, a low-grade not yet, that attaches itself to invitations, to opportunities, even to small everyday choices that shouldn't require a negotiation at all. Not yet for the pool, not yet for the photo, not yet for the dress you actually like and have walked past in 3 different stores. Not yet, not yet, not yet. For years, sometimes for decades, while your life keeps happening around that not yet, with or without you fully inside it. Here's what makes this pattern worth naming directly, out loud, the way you're doing right now. Unlike some of the patterns we've talked about in this series, hidden body identity doesn't necessarily cause visible distress. Renee wasn't depressed. She wasn't withdrawn from her relationships in any way her family could have pointed to. From the outside, her life looked full. But full and fully lived in are not always the same thing. Renee was present for her daughter's graduation, genuinely present, not performing it. But she also spent a portion of that day quietly managing where she stood, who was nearby with a phone, and how to gracefully exit the frame before the shutter clicked. That's not nothing. Multiply that by every gathering, every vacation, every ordinary Tuesday where a photo might happen. And what you have is a kind of low-grade tax on presence, paid quietly, for years, by someone whose life otherwise looks completely fine on paper. This is part of why hidden body identity can be one of the harder patterns to actually address. And it's not because the feelings involved are unusually intense. It's because they're so well camouflaged, even from the person carrying them, that naming the pattern out loud can feel like making a fuss about nothing. It's just photos. And yet, multiplied across years, it adds up to something real, a slow erosion of the record of a life, and a slower, quieter erosion of the felt experience of actually being in that life, rather than managing it from just outside the frame. If you've ever shared any version of this with someone close to you, you may have heard a well-meant reassurance that goes something like, "Nobody's looking at you that closely. Nobody cares." And I want to name why that reassurance, even offered with real warmth, doesn't actually land. It doesn't land because whether or not other people are looking that closely was never really the point. The discomfort isn't primarily about other people's attention. It's about the internal experience of being seen at all, which can feel exposing, regardless of whether a single other person even notices you're in the frame. A more useful reframe, one you can offer yourself, even if nobody else ever offers it to you, isn't "nobody's looking." It's something closer to, "being seen doesn't require me to be anything other than what I already am right now." That's a bigger shift than it sounds like, and it doesn't happen because someone convinces you of it in a single conversation. It happens through small, repeated experiences of actually being seen and discovering, often to your own surprise, that the thing you've been bracing against doesn't actually happen. Now I want to bring this directly into the middle of your journey, because this domain does real work on you, whether or not you're mid-process right now. If you're currently in it, post-surgery, on a medication, deep into a lifestyle change with real structure around it, the "not yet" voice tends to get louder here, not quieter, because it finally has a finish line to point to. It says, "Wait until the surgery settles. Wait until the number moves further. Wait until you're closer to done." And identity management here, as it always does in this series, sits alongside your medical and nutritional care, never in place of it. Nothing about addressing hidden body identity means skipping appointments, rushing your process, or deciding you know your timeline better than your care team does. It means something narrower, and I'd argue more urgent. Noticing that the "not yet" voice has quietly been given permission to postpone your actual presence in your own life until an outcome arrives. An outcome that, even under the best medical care in the world, isn't fully guaranteed on any particular date. Waiting for a finished body before you let yourself be seen means potentially waiting through years of a life that's actually happening right now, whether you're fully in it or not. I want to be honest about what doesn't help here too, because I don't want to leave you with the wrong instruction. The goal is not sudden, dramatic exposure. Nothing about this pattern improves because someone tells you to just get over it, to pose for every photo starting tomorrow, or to show up to every event you've avoided for the last 5 years all at once. That approach doesn't address the pattern. It just creates a new, more acute version of the same discomfort, and it usually ends in retreating even further than before. What tends to help instead is something smaller and more deliberate. Small, chosen acts of visibility, on your terms, at your own pace, with an escape route built in if you need one. A single photo, taken by someone you trust, that you choose not to delete right away. Standing at the edge of a group photo, instead of ducking out of frame entirely. Trying on, in the privacy of a dressing room with no obligation to buy anything, the kind of clothing you've been avoiding, just to notice how it actually feels, with no further commitment attached to that noticing. These might sound almost too small to matter, and I want to say clearly, that's actually the point. Smallness is what makes an action repeatable, and repeatable is what eventually shifts a pattern that took years to form in the first place. You didn't learn to duck out of photographs in a single afternoon, and you're not going to unlearn it in one either. But one photo you don't delete, tried once, is data. 2 is a pattern starting to form in the other direction. That's the same principle we keep returning to throughout this whole series. The smallest possible step, taken on purpose, repeated, and it applies here exactly as much as it applies anywhere else we've walked together. So here's today's practice, sized the way it always is in this series. Small enough to actually happen in a day that's already full. If hidden body identity feels at all familiar to you, the sidestep, the "not yet," the quiet management of where you stand in a room, I want you to consider just one small act of visibility you could try in the coming days. It doesn't need to be big, and it doesn't need to be permanent. It might be asking someone you trust to take a single photo of you and choosing not to delete it right away, even if you don't look at it again for a while. It might be standing somewhere inside a group photo instead of stepping out of it. It might be wearing, for what hour, around your own home, something you've been avoiding, just to notice how it feels, with nothing else required of you. You just have to write down the one you'd be willing to try, and then notice, without judgment, what comes up in you as you consider it. That noticing, on its own, is already a form of the work. And if you do that today, that's a non-weight win, even though nothing about it will ever show up on a scale. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Begin Purpose podcast. In our next episode, we're going to go further back into the body's own history to something called survival body identity. The idea that your body isn't just a record of what happened to you. It's a record of what you survived and what that record actually deserves from you now. Until then, do today's practice. Pick the one small act of visibility you'd be willing to try. You don't have to do it today. You just have to name it. And remember, a failed method does not mean a failed person. You are not broken. This is Begin Purpose, and today is a good day to stop waiting for a finished body before you let yourself be seen in the one you have right now. One quick note before you go. This podcast offers identity and self-reflection tools. It is not medical, psychological, or nutritional advice. Always work with your doctor, nutritionist, or licensed professional on decisions about your health, medications, or eating.